You're staring down at a bank statement that showcases more zeros than your government salary could ever dream of producing in a lifetime. How did it even get to this point? The sleek Porsche idling in your driveway costs triple your annual income, and your kid is enrolled at a private school that even sitting senators can barely afford. Every single month, like a heartbeat, a mysterious wire transfer hits your offshore account with terrifying precision. You aren't just bending the rules anymore. You're a full-blown traitor with a high-yield pension plan. It was never supposed to spiral this far, was it? 5 years ago, you were the absolute model agent, weren't you? You had top marks at the farm, fluency in 3 languages, and a heart full of genuine belief in the truth, justice, and the American way. The very propaganda they fed you until you were full. But here's the cold, hard truth. Belief doesn't pay for your mother's experimental cancer treatments. Does patriotism cover your brother's mountain of legal bills after his business partner cleaned out their accounts and vanished into thin air? No, the agency promised you'd be taken care of, yet they handed you a salary that barely covers rent in D.C. and told you your sacrifice was noble. What a joke. Then came the assignment that flipped your world upside down. You were posted to a diplomatic station in Eastern Europe, a former Soviet state still dizzily trying to figure out which direction to face. Your job was recruiting assets inside the local government. Standard, dirty work. You had to find vulnerable people, exploit their deepest weaknesses, and turn them into sources. You were good at it. Honestly, you were maybe too good. It was haunting because the people you were learning to manipulate were the same kind of desperate you were becoming. Your partner at the station was a man named Marcus, a senior case officer with 15 years in the field. He'd seen enough to never be surprised by anything. Marcus ran his operations by the book, and he had this incredibly annoying habit of actually believing in the mission. It made you feel sick about the dark thoughts forming in the back of your head. One night, Marcus took you to a diplomatic reception, one of those standard networking events with champagne that tasted like pure money and conversations that meant absolutely nothing. That's where you met Victor. Russian intelligence, obviously, though his business card claimed he was a cultural attaché. Everyone in that room knew exactly what he was. He wasn't a shadowy figure in a trench coat. He was charming, highly educated, and wearing a suit that cost more than your car. He made a witty joke about the cheap wine, and you actually laughed. He asked about your work in the vaguest terms possible, and you deflected with professional grace. When he handed you his card and smiled, walking away, Marcus watched the whole exchange from across the room with narrowed eyes. He warned you to be careful, saying Victor had a reputation for spotting weakness the way a shark spots blood in the water. You told Marcus you could handle it, didn't you? You even threw Victor's card in the trash that night, but you fished it out of the garbage 3 weeks later when the hospital called about your mother's mounting bills. The first meeting was innocent enough, just coffee at a cafe in Vienna during a layover. Victor asked for nothing classified. He just wanted to know about workplace culture and bureaucratic frustrations. The kind of stuff you'd vent about to any friend. He listened like a therapist. At the end, he slid an envelope across the table containing 10,000 euros. He called it a consulting fee for your time. You should have walked away, shouldn't you? You should have reported it immediately. Instead, you bought your mother 2 more months of treatment. By the second meeting, he asked for something small, though not yet a state secret. You were already hooked, weren't you? All Victor wanted was the name of a single mid-level analyst working the Eastern European desk. That was it. Just a name? He offered a staggering $50,000 for something that felt so insignificant. You desperately told yourself this wasn't real espionage. It was practically public HR information if someone just tried hard enough, right? You took the money, you gave him the name, and you didn't look back. But 3 months later, that analyst was suddenly reassigned to a dead-end desk job in Kansas. Why did that happen? You never dared to ask. That's exactly how they hook you. Not with one massive, explosive betrayal, but with 1,000 tiny poisonous compromises that seem survivable in the moment. Each one adds another heavy link to the chain until you suddenly realize you aren't walking toward the exit anymore. You're being dragged into the abyss. For 2 long years, you played this dangerous game with surgical precision. You fed Victor intelligence that felt vital but was actually outdated or partially declassified. You handed over names of agents who were retiring anyway and provided reports on operations that had already been compromised through other channels. You actually convinced yourself you were running a controlled burn, pocketing the cash while minimizing the real damage. Weren't you the smartest person in the room, playing both sides like a master? Meanwhile, Marcus kept being Marcus, solid, reliable, and so annoyingly moral. He started noticing the cracks. It wasn't the money. You were far too careful for that. No, it was the way you'd vanish for hours during assignments, the way your reports conveniently omitted certain details in the heavy silence that followed your phone calls. One night, over drinks at a bar near the station, he dropped a sentence that hit you like a high-caliber bullet. He told you that you'd changed. He said you used to be the guy who stayed late to get everything right. But now you were the guy who left early and prayed nobody noticed. You laughed it off, calling him paranoid in his old age, but he didn't laugh back. He just finished his drink and said he hoped you knew what you were doing. The look in his eyes, it told you he already suspected the truth, even if he couldn't bring himself to believe it yet. Then the nightmare began, an internal mole hunt. After a string of blown operations, counterintelligence launched a total sweep with mandatory polygraphs and financial audits disguised as routine updates. The walls were closing in fast. You watched colleagues you'd known for years get hauled out by security, their careers vaporized in an instant. Some were guilty, but most were just unlucky victims of suspicious metadata. You passed your first polygraph through sheer ice-cold preparation, controlling your breathing and focusing on technical truths. When they asked if you'd ever provided classified info, you just thought about how your documents were technically downgraded. The machine said you were clean, but why did the examiner look at you a second too long? Marcus cruised through his in 9 minutes, clean as glass. He clapped you on the shoulder, calling the hunt a search for ghosts, while your stomach felt like it was digesting itself. That's when Victor finally made his real demand. He called on a burner phone. How did he even have that number? This time he didn't ask. He commanded. There was an operation in Syria with deep cover agents embedded in a resistance group. Victor needed their identities, locations, and protocols. This wasn't just brokering anymore, was it? This was a death sentence. This wasn't just some high-stakes corporate espionage anymore. This was sentencing living, breathing people to death. For the first time in 2 agonizing years, you actually found the nerve to say no. But did Victor flinch? Did his voice even waver? Not a chance. Instead, your phone chimed with the clinical precision of a funeral bell. He texted a photo. Your daughter, innocent and smiling, walking out of her school. Chime. Another photo. Your mother, frail in her hospital bed, with humming machines as her only company. Chime. A third photo. Your bank statements, highlighted and annotated with a trail of deposits so obvious it would take a forensic accountant all of 11 minutes to trace. Victor gave you a 48-hour ultimatum. He told you that if you dared to go to your superiors, the evidence would land on the director's desk before you even finished your tearful confession. He whispered the coldest truth of all. You had made your choice 2 years ago, and now you just had to live with the rot. You sat in your car in the station parking lot for an entire hour, staring into a vacuum of nothingness. Suddenly, your phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. He was asking if you wanted to grab dinner. His wife was making that pasta you always liked. It was so normal. It was the kind of message a real friend sends when they have no idea their brother's drowning. You almost called him. You almost screamed everything into the receiver. Marcus would know what to do, right? He always did. But telling Marcus meant the total destruction of yourself and that selfish, desperate part of you, the part that grabbed that first envelope in Vienna, wasn't ready to die yet. Instead, you drove home, kissed your daughter goodnight with a heavy heart, and locked yourself in your office until 3 o'clock in the morning, frantically running scenarios. Every single option ended in a bloodbath. Cooperate with Victor and people die. Refuse and your family is annihilated. Confess and rot in a cage for decades. Run and the agency hunts you down like a dog within a week. Then a dark thought flickered. Marcus. Not Marcus the friend, but Marcus the resource. He had mentioned casually that he was running support logistics for the Syria operation. His credentials could pull every document Victor demanded. If you could just get to his workstation for 15 minutes. You could copy everything and leave absolutely no trail leading back to you. The mole hunt would eventually zero in on Marcus, his access, his proximity, and that recently flagged trip to Istanbul that perfectly coincided with a Russian intel gathering. You would be framing the one human being in the building who actually trusted you. The thought made you physically sick. You ran to the bathroom and retched until your ribs ached. Then you washed your face, stared at your ghost-like reflection in the mirror, and started planning the betrayal. The next morning you arrived early, but Marcus was already there. He was always there. He was reviewing cables with coffee that smelled like it had been brewed during the Cold War. He looked up, smiled, and asked if you were okay. Did you look like you hadn't slept? You lied through your teeth, blaming a stomach bug. He offered his wife's home remedy for tomorrow. The casual kindness felt like a serrated knife in your gut. You waited until 11 a.m., knowing his schedule by heart. The meeting would last 90 minutes. You walked to his workstation. The hallway was a tomb. Your hands were steady, which disturbed you more than if they'd been shaking. Shaking meant you still had a soul. Steady meant you were already gone. You knew his password. You'd seen him type it 100 times. Marcus wasn't careless. He just trusted you. Are you really going to do this? He just trusted you. That was the simple, devastating truth that shattered everything. The very same unwavering trust that made him an incredible partner was about to turn him into the prime suspect of a massive espionage investigation. The files were sitting exactly where he'd mentioned: Syria operational details, agent identities, secret contact protocols, and even the extraction plans. You worked like a ghost, copying every single life and death document onto a micro drive in under 8 minutes flat. You meticulously cleared the access logs, leaving a void where your betrayal should have been. Walking back to your desk, you sat down and acted like nothing had happened. When Marcus returned from his meeting 20 minutes later, he dropped a container of his wife's homemade soup on your desk for that fake stomach bug. Can you imagine the guilt? You thanked him without even looking up because you couldn't trust your own face not to scream the truth. That evening, under the shadow of a park bench 3 miles from the station, you met Victor. You handed over the drive, and he plugged it into a laptop, verifying the digital souls you just sold. He nodded, satisfied, and initiated the transfer. $200,000. It was more money than you'd ever seen for a single delivery. Pure blood money. Victor stood up and said something that would echo in the chambers of your mind for decades. He told you that you'd finally become what he always knew you could be. Not just an asset or a source, but a professional. He walked away into the twilight, and you sat there until the sun vanished, watching joggers and dog walkers move through the park as if the world hadn't just shifted on its axis. 3 weeks later, the nightmare turned real. 2 embedded agents in Syria went dark, then a third. The station descended into absolute chaos. Emergency extraction protocols were shrieking, and Marcus was running point, working 20-hour days in a desperate, frantic attempt to locate the missing operatives. You watched him burn himself to the ground, exhausting every ounce of his soul to save people you had already sold for a wire transfer. They found the first agent's body discarded in a ditch outside Aleppo. The second never recovered. The third managed to crawl across the Turkish border, barely clinging to life with burns covering 60% of his body. He'd been interrogated for 11 agonizing days before his captors got bored and literally set him on fire. The mole hunt accelerated into a frenzy. Counterintelligence tore through every file and communication log, and just as you had cold-bloodedly planned, the trail led straight to Marcus, his workstation, his operational knowledge, his Istanbul trip. The circumstantial case was devastating. They hauled Marcus out of a briefing on a Tuesday afternoon, flanked by security officers. He didn't resist or shout. He just looked across the room at you with an expression of pure, unfiltered confusion. It was like a dog that doesn't understand why it's being hit. You had to look away. Marcus was placed on administrative leave, his security clearance stripped away like a second skin. His wife called you that night, sobbing, begging for answers. You told her you didn't know anything. You told her Marcus was strong and it would work out, even as each word tasted like toxic poison in your mouth. The investigation dragged on for 4 months. Marcus maintained his innocence through every grueling polygraph and interview, but the manufactured evidence was overwhelming. The agency needed a sacrificial lamb. They offered him a deal: resign quietly with no prosecution, just a silent erasure of a 15-year career. The alternative was a trial that would bankrupt his family and end in a conviction no jury would question. Marcus took the deal. He was gone. He resigned on a bleak Thursday, packing 15 years of his life into a single pathetic cardboard box. You weren't there to see him leave. How could you be? You were a coward hiding in the shadows of your own guilt. But you heard the rumors later. They said he stopped at your empty desk on his way out, stood there in a heavy, suffocating silence for a full minute, and then walked away without saying a single word. Now, 6 months later, here you are, still at the agency, still feeding precious intelligence to Victor, and still watching those offshore accounts swell with blood money. The mole hunt is officially closed, the traitor has been caught, and the cold machinery of the government has simply moved on. To top off the nightmare, you actually got promoted last month. Isn't the irony just perfectly grotesque? The man who sold out his own brothers is now running the very department designed to catch people exactly like him. You looked Marcus up recently. Did you think that would make you feel better? He's driving for a delivery company now. Think about that. 15 years of elite service, mastery of 3 languages, and a medal he can never even show his family, all so he can deliver packages for $12 an hour. His wife walked out on him. His own children think their father is a traitor. The intelligence community is a small, gossipy world. Everyone knows his name and the shame attached to it. He can't get a security clearance. He can't get a government job. And he can't even get hired by a defense contractor because that red flag will haunt him until the day he dies. You did that, not Victor, not the agency. You. Some nights you sit in your pristine home office and just stare at that digital balance. The number keeps growing, doesn't it? Your mother's treatment is fully covered, your daughter's elite school is paid for, and your house is a goddamn masterpiece. From the outside, you are the definition of American success. But here's the secret nobody tells you about betrayal. It isn't a single, sharp moment. No, it's a sound, a low, constant hum that you can almost ignore in the sunlight, but becomes a deafening roar at night. It's vibrating in the walls. It's screaming in the silence between conversations. It's why you can't look at old photos of you and Marcus without feeling something physically crack behind your ribs. Suddenly your phone buzzes. Victor has a new request regarding a NATO intelligence sharing protocol. You pick it up and start reading because that's what you do now, isn't it? That's all you are. Somewhere across the city, Marcus is loading heavy boxes into a rusted van, still clueless about who destroyed his life. He still doesn't know it was the person who ate his wife's soup, laughed at his jokes, and promised to have his back no matter what. You told yourself that first envelope was just survival. The second was just a name. The third was just a file. But somewhere along the line, you stopped counting the bodies. Now you're sitting in a corner office with blood on your hands and a promotion on your wall, realizing the only honest thing left to say is that you are exactly the kind of person you swore you'd never become. The phone keeps buzzing, and you keep answering because that's what tools do. They get used until they finally snap. You haven't broken yet, but Marcus's face in that briefing room, the sheer, heartbreaking confusion, visits you every single night. Each time that crack behind your ribs gets a little wider, doesn't it? One day it'll split open completely, and whatever falls out won't be something you can ever put back together. But today you answer the phone. Today you do the job. Today you pretend you're still a human being and not just a machine powered by guilt and wire transfers. Victor says, "Good morning," and you say it back. Buried under layers of self-deception is the one truth you'll never scream out loud. You miss your best friend, and you're the reason he's gone.